If you want to hit insane stuff like this, or even a double flip reset, you're going to have to learn how to stall. When learning how to stall, I have discovered a new easy method to execute clean stalls consistently. Before we discuss the new method, we first need to know how to do stalls normally. And we also need to discuss how they work, but right after you destroy that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And while you're there, you might as well drop a sub. It's free and it helps support the channel so much and help me get more videos out to you guys. Okay, let's get right into it. A stall is a maneuver that allows it to stay suspended in the air by doing a side flip cancel. This is needed for multiple flip resets by stalling under the ball, and the moment you're paused in the air, gravity will bring the ball down to your car, giving you the next reset as it pops the ball back up. This works because any flip you do in the air, your Y velocity is immediately zero regardless of how fast you're falling. So if the flip cancels out your Y momentum, canceling the flip itself will cancel your movement altogether. So much like a front flip cancel where you front flip and then hold back to cancel it, or when you cancel a back flip to do a half flip for example, to do the stall, we're basically just canceling out our side flip by using air roll. If we do a left flip for example, if you're holding right air roll at the same time, that causes the flip to cancel, giving you a stall. You can also use the left air roll to cancel the right flip as well. Either of these work and you can use whichever one you prefer. For the sake of this video, we're going to move forward using left on the left stick and right air roll. So now that we know how the stall works, here's how you perform it. Whenever you're in the air and you have your flip, simply hold left on the left stick, then you're going to hold right air roll and press jump, which will perform a left side flip that's going to be cancelled by your right air roll, resulting in a stall. You'll notice that your stall looks kind of weird since you're going to be tornado spinning, bringing us to our next step. After you press the stall, let go of right air roll, then let go of your left input. You'll want to let go of right air roll and left as soon as possible so that you can stay as flat as possible, especially the air roll button. The biggest priority is to let go of that right air roll as soon as possible, or else your stall will be slightly tilted like this. The reason this is a problem is because if your stall isn't perfectly flat, when you try to go get your reset back, you might only hit the ball with 2 of your side wheels instead of all 4. So being a perfectly flat surface is the key to getting your reset back. Bringing us to our new method. The goal is to reduce the time between performing the stall and letting go of your air roll. Let's call this the release gap. So for the easiest way to get the smallest release gap possible, the new method is quite simple. We just have to let go of air roll even before we do the flip for the stall.
What?
Okay, you might be thinking, I'm crazy, I've lost it. How are we gonna stall if we're not holding air roll when we do our flip? We're just gonna flip instead of stall, right?
Well,
the next part explaining why it works might be a bit long, so if you don't care about that and just want to know how to execute it, then skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen now. But for the people who are staying, great. You are a person of science and I respect your curiosity. Let's get into it. So we first need to know what an input buffer is. Within the Unreal game engine, and basically with how any game engine works, whenever you press an input, your controller sends a signal to your PC or console, and then the signal is sent to Rocket League to be processed before the game knows what to do with it. It's not as simple as you press A and game does jump. The game needs to check, well, can you jump? Maybe you're demoed. Maybe you've already used up both your jump. Who knows? Maybe you're not even in the game. You're in the menu, and in that case, your A button should select something in the menu instead of jumping, right? So then once the game has confirmed that you can jump, it'll start playing the jump animation and it physically start moving your player model. So the time the game takes to process your input is the input buffer. For some games, the input buffer can be quite long depending on how much processing it needs to do, and it's how we check for basic combination presses. For example, if you're going to jump in the air, Rocket League needs to check if you're either double jumping or doing a front flip. Then what it'll do is actually check for an existing up input in your input buffer, and if it finds it, then Rocket League knows to do a front flip instead of a normal double jump. Okay, moving on, stay with me here, we're gonna dive even deeper into the rabbit hole. So there's a game called Marvel vs. Capcom, and there's a very OP combo called the Lightning Loop. The lightning attack is performed by jumping and then pressing forward, down, and down forward, and then punch in the air. But if we see the height of the lightning here, it's a lot higher than in the combo. So what they needed to do was actually reduce the time between pressing jump and pressing punch to execute the lightning. Sounds familiar, right? So for us, we need to reduce the time that we execute the stall and letting go of air roll. What the fighting game community found was that by abusing the input buffer, we can actually swap the inputs and change the order. We can move this jump input to after the lightning activation sequence, allowing us to get the smallest gap possible between jump and punch. And this works because even though we've swapped the order, when the punch input enters the input buffer and it looks around for the other inputs, as long as we're pressing punch fast enough, the lightning activation sequence hasn't fully left the input buffer yet. So the punch input will see it on its tail end and still get us the lightning. Okay, so let's take this idea from the fighting game community and get back to Rocket League. The new way we can execute a stall is by flipping our input sequence. Now, we don't know what the input buffer is for Rocket League, but we can usually approximate based on other games that it's probably around 3 frames. For our new method, when we're in the air with our flip, we're gonna hold left and then hold right air roll. And right away, we're just gonna let go of right air roll and then immediately press jump to perform the stall. And then we're gonna let go of left. This jump needs to be pressed within 2 to 3 frames of letting go of air roll, which is extremely fast, but doing so will let the jump input still be able to see an air roll input in the buffer, despite having let go of air roll already, giving us a stall with the minimum amount of air roll affecting it. As you can see here, my air roll is on B and my jump is on A. But if we watch it frame by frame, we can see that by the time my jump is pressed, my air roll is already released. But it's done within a 1 frame difference, so we satisfy the input buffer requirement. If you're already proficient at stalling, you probably don't need this trick to get clean stalls. You might even already be doing this sort of timing instinctively. But I'm hoping for people who are new to stalling and trying to learn it, I hope this new trick can shed some light on the timing in which you want to press your inputs for a clean stall. If you want a demonstration on how fast I press jump after releasing air roll, I basically just slide my finger from one button to the other to make sure I do it fast enough to still get the stall. Now, a quick extra tip for getting even cleaner stalls, and this works on the regular method as well, you can press the opposite air roll to cancel out the remaining 1 or 2 frames of the air roll right. Even if you use the new method, you're always going to get at least 1 or 2 frames of air roll right. So after hitting the stall, I very quickly tap left air roll to become 100% flat. The next issue you'll run into is actually trying to use it for a double flip reset. This is because when you're just practicing stalls, your analog stick is in a neutral position, not pressing anything else except the stall. But when you're flying around and then getting into the stall, it's going to be much harder to execute the stall without flipping or something, since your stick was not in a neutral position. So how I practiced this part was actually using my ceiling shot training pack, which will be in the description below. I go into ceiling to reset my flip, and then I stall into the ball. It doesn't matter if you score or anything, obviously. The goal is just to use the stall to hit the ball, so that you can get used to executing a stall while you're adjusting your car and pressing other things already. If this is your first time practicing stalls, I highly recommend practicing this before going straight into practicing using them for a double flip reset. So that's pretty much all I had for today. In the future, I plan on inviting Impulse back to help us with our basic to advanced flip reset tutorial. So again, make sure to have that notification bell on if you're interested. As always, thank you for watching.